Good morning, guys. It's good to see you. We're talking this morning about being a brother like a tree, and being that faithful brother or finding that faithful brother. I'm in a Bible study with a pastor named Mike Lotzer, who's at Mercy Road Church. We were talking after our study the other day. Mike has been a chaplain, an Army chaplain. He was deployed to Iraq, came back with some of his own stresses. And because of his military background, he does some retreats that are based, they're for military guys who are either coming back from some deployment or just the normal stresses that a military marriage goes through. And when they do these retreats, he said it is really intense. And they talk a lot about PTSD. They talk about suicidal thoughts, about violence, about the things that happen in the marriages, about abuse that takes place. And he was at a retreat recently, and in the middle of the night, they heard some guy came running into his room, and he said, "I think I just heard a gunshot." And they were searching through the whole retreat center. Who's missing? And what they found out was that one of the bottles of fizzy water had exploded in one of the rooms, and somebody thought it was a gunshot, but they automatically thought somebody has just taken his life. And one of the things that they're doing is they're saying, we're providing a place where men can talk to men about what's real. And it's such an essential part of their healing. This seems like a convergence of things between Ironworks and what he was talking about. And then I heard from Rotary Club the other day. A friend of mine came back from there, and he said, "I've just found out about these guys that are," he said, I'm pretty sure they're Christians, but they've started something called the Face It Foundation. And here's what it says on their website. 1 in 10 men experiences depression. But fear, shame, and a lack of understanding about depression prevents many from seeking help. Men often feel pressure to simply man up and get over it. There's the fear that admitting to a struggle or asking for help will be seen as unmanly, and men often reject the idea of taking antidepressants or seeing a counselor. Some men are not even aware that they're depressed. They just know that life has become unmanageable. And tragically, 35,000 men die by suicide each year, often due to depression. And so they start small groups all over the country. They do group therapy, they do counseling, they do a lot of things. But basically, the bottom line is this. This is what they said. Basically, we help men find a friend. So you never know. You won't know it probably, unless you really have a close friend. But as you are connected to another person as a brother, you may be saving a life. This may be providing the atmosphere where a man can talk about things before they get to crisis level. And as we open up to each other, as we find those brothers, and it may not happen here, although it could happen here. This could be the start. This might be the doorway, but there might be another place in your life where you're buddied up with somebody, and it's opportunity for you to get beyond kicking the tires about sports and hobbies and really talk about life. Because really, discipleship is a group project, but life is a group project. There's a couple of free books on the table back there, and one of them is called The Bond of Brothers by Wes Yoder, who came here a few years ago and spoke with our group. Here's what Wes Yoder says in his book, Bond of Brothers. The tough years in a man's life show up like a bucket of snakes and weird crawly things. Whatever's in that bucket comes crawling out, and God prescribes fire for the gnarly critters that attach themselves to us. He knows just when to turn on the heat, just what spot to put us in, so we cannot run from the purifying fire. We need our brothers more during the middle years than in any other season of our lives, because it is the time when men are most alone. These middle years are rough years when men have not yet learned to lean on each other in their shared weakness, when confident men begin to question themselves and everything they believe. It's a time when men grow tired and restless and fearful, or decide that because of their success, they are invincible. It's a time when they face mystery and uncertainty unlike any other time during their lives. Seems like God is sending us a message, right? Not only that this is a fun series to go through in Ironworks, oh brother, let's find a brother. I think God is sending us a message reinforcing what he said in his biblical worldview, that we need each other. So this is not just pleasant time, it's not just play time, it's serious time, it's enjoyable time, but it's an opportunity for us to not take for granted the fellowship that we have. And so I want to just add on to that today, and we want to talk about be the tree. Be a vital brother. How do you build this kind? I want to give you some background, and you may say, well, yeah, this is yada, yada, yada. We've heard this many times before. But then I want to take us to kind of a profile and ask you the question, what kind of brothers do I have, or what kind of brother am I? And I think it'll be an interesting exercise for us. So let's talk first about be the tree. Be that brother that God wants us to be. So I want to read Psalm 1, first of all, to start off, and then we'll come back and look at some specific verses. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water that yields its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither. In all that he does, he prospers. The wicked are not so, but are like the chaff that the wind drives away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish. Well, you have both warnings and exhortations in that. And I'm finding this to be a truism, which means it's almost true all the time. And that is that warnings to men don't work. If a man is on a course and he's stubborn and unteachable, or if he has a temptation that he refuses to renounce, you can say, brother, I said this to a young man the other day. He said, what am I going to lose? I said, well, you're going to lose your family. You're going to lose these two precious children. They will never have the stable kind of home that you say you wanted in your life and never had. You're going to lose half your income if this marriage breaks up, for the next 18 years at least. You're going to lose a lot of friends. You're going to lose part of the extended family that you've come to enjoy. And you're going to experience loneliness like you've never experienced if you chase this fantasy. I'm praying that he will have a teachable spirit, because without a teachable spirit, he'll say, well, that doesn't sound so bad. I think I can do that. My current experience is so dreadful. I don't know what else to do. But warnings don't work for men. They're still true, but alone they won't work. And in Psalm 1, what we have is this picture of a future, this picture of a thriving tree-like life that gives shade and life to everybody else. We have this draw. This is what I want to become, and that's what gives power. And when men know that they want to go somewhere, then when they know that they want to drive in the lane that brings them life, then the guardrails matter. Because I don't want to mess up the life that God wants for me. So Psalm 1 has both. It has both the warnings, which are important. And many times people think that's the only reason pastors exist. You know, I'm going to drag this scallywag into the pastor's office and he's going to tell him what for. You've tried that, haven't you, with your kids? And unless there's a spirit of teachability, we're just cussed and stubborn. And warnings alone don't work. But a vision for what we can become, coupled with the sound warnings that God gives us, to don't touch the wire that's hot. Those things work in our life. So let's just talk about this vital brotherhood. He is like a tree planted by streams of water that yields its fruit in season. There's a vitality and a stability and a trustworthiness and a reliability to a man whose roots go deep. So first of all, it's deep roots. Blessed is the man who, look at these words, who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners. In other words, he doesn't allow himself to be a target, to absorb and to soak up the worldview, the nastiness, the cynicism, the sinfulness, the temptation. He doesn't stand around waiting to be steered somewhere with the ungodly, with the sinners, nor sits in a seat of scoffers, but delights himself in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. And there again, you see the contrast. How am I going to fill my mind? And therefore, what will I avoid? Or at least I will temper how much exposure I have. Or when I'm exposed, I'm going to be aware that I want to have a filter that is stronger than the garbage that's being pointed at me. And what it's saying here is that character can't be borrowed. It can't be faked. You can't instantly import character. It has to be built. So this kind of trustworthiness is not given, it's not awarded, it's built day by day by what we feed our minds on. If you want a little bit of an encyclopedic nature of that, you can go to Psalm 15, and it says that the righteous man does right, he speaks the truth, there's no slander in his tongue, there's no mischief toward his neighbor, there's no gossip against a friend, there's a revulsion of sin, and he honors the good, he keeps his word, he's not greedy, and he stands for justice. That's a long list of things. But a man of honor whose roots go down deep doesn't have to memorize a list. He just has in his heart and mind what is right in that situation. So I believe this is the most recognizable trait of a Christ-following man. It's not the bumper sticker you have. It isn't the sticker you have on the back of your laptop. You know, it's not your Berean shirt. The most recognizable trait of a godly man is this kind of tree-like existence, that it's a man who's rooted, who knows who he is, and is fed by what God wants in his life. And I believe women notice this, women in the office. The women in your extended family notice this. I believe neighbors notice this. They notice the regularity, the trustworthiness, the reliability. Sounds really dull, doesn't it? To be a reliable man. I was talking to Steve the other day, and we were talking about, we have so many men in our lives that we could trust. And I've done, you know, often when you do a funeral for people, a memorial service, and you talk with families, you learn a lot about the family system. And I've done some memorial services and funerals for families where the father dies, the grandfather dies, and there's not one trustworthy man in the whole system to handle the estate. They're already arguing about the money, the property, the farm, the house, the doodads. And they can't find one trustworthy man who would equitably distribute this stuff. So they have to hire attorneys, and all the estate goes to attorney fees. You know, sorry, Ben. Somebody's got to make a living, you know. I didn't mean that as a dig. I really didn't. All right, we just lost another brother. Sorry. But this kind of trustworthiness is not fabricated. It's built. And we talk about this all the time. That's the theme of Ironworks. And so maybe we don't need to go into it. But it's like a conglomerate rock, you know, that's pressed together, and it's become solid because of the elements that go into it. And they're inseparable elements of our lives that are infused in us because we're going toward this positive vision. So there's deep roots, there's consistent shade. Let me give you a couple of qualities of what brings shade into a relationship. One is listening. In James 1:19, you know the verse, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. So it's active listening, it's eye contact, it's focused attention. Just watch sometime when you're around a group of men. Is anybody giving eye contact? Is anybody really listening? Or do we have the 90-degree rule, you know? You never really face each other. It's always 90 degrees. And, a real friend is looking at your shoes instead of looking at his shoes. No, that's not it. So here's some questions about listening. Here's some ways to listen. Just ask a person, what's been happening. Maybe if they're sharing a struggle in their life, you can ask the question, what have you tried? What have you thought of for solutions? The next question is, what is your sense of the obstacles? Here's a question that's really valuable. If you were watching yourself, what would you recommend? Because usually the answer is in the person. Yeah, if I were watching myself, I'd stop that. Well, okay, let's talk about that. This is listening. Listening is not just passive. It's trying to guide the conversation. And then finally it would be, do you want any suggestions from me? And often we start with those. We start with advice, and we haven't really listened. But the right kind of questions draw out a man, and he usually knows a little bit about what he ought to be doing. I think the one place that often listening helps is that often people feel like they're fighting an obstacle that's not really the obstacle. There's something behind that, and a listener can help him see that and focus on the right thing. Another issue that brings shade is clarity. I like Proverbs 17:27. Whoever restrains his words has knowledge, and he who has a cool spirit is a man of understanding. Clarity is really important, and this is important in your marriage, but the most frequent question people ask when they're in trouble is why? Why is this happening to me? Why does God allow it to snow in April? I don't know why. But why? And that's a sinkhole that is usually unanswerable when you have a struggle. But here's some more helpful questions to bring clarity. The first one is, what is happening? What is happening? Name it. Say what's happening. The car broke down, the transmission went out, we don't have enough money. Well, let's name what it is. Second question is, who could help me? Well, that's a listener. That's a brother. Maybe I could go to somebody and say, what can I do about this? What are suggestions? And I can't tell you how many times I've gone to somebody with knowledge and they've made child's play out of what I thought was an insurmountable obstacle in my life. Whether it's mechanical or personal. Who can help me? What is happening? Who can help me? And the next question is, how do I get started? And what that does is it brings clarity instead of this cloud of why, which usually brings a sense of martyrdom and victimhood and freezes us in paralysis. So a friend can bring that kind of clarity. Let's talk about, okay, what has happened? Let's diagnose it. Who can help? How do you go about this? And the third thing is counsel. This proverb, I'm stuck on Proverbs after Kurt talked last week about so many Proverbs. Thank you, Kurt. Faithful or trustworthy are the wounds of a friend, but profuse are the kisses of an enemy. Now, that doesn't mean that you're supposed to go wound your friend. It just means if you need to share the truth, and it's a hard truth, if you're a trustworthy person, You can say, have you thought of this? Do you realize that you're not being teachable right now? Have you looked in your wake to see how the relationships are thriving or thrashing behind you? A faithful friend will ask those kinds of questions and hold up the mirror and say some things to us. Like a friend can say, maybe you're overreacting. Or a friend can say, can you hang on till Friday when we can talk? A friend can say, what's driving this urgency about this decision? It may not have to happen today. So a friend can bring counsel in that way. So it's deep roots, it's consistent shade. Be the tree is also generous fruit. I'm doing a weekend in Huron, South Dakota this weekend, a men's retreat starting tonight and tomorrow. Huron, South Dakota is just like Florida, except with a 40-mile-an-hour wind and 30 degrees. But otherwise, it'll be exactly like that. But here's what I'm using this verse in 2 Timothy. We're going to extract, this is a beautiful verse. I won't give you the whole retreat here, but here's what it says. You, that's Timothy, you, however, have followed my teaching, my conduct, my aim in life, my faith, my patience, my love, my steadfastness, my persecutions and sufferings that happened to me at Antioch, at Iconium, and at Lystra, which persecutions I endured, yet from them all the Lord rescued me. Timothy's life was visible, or Paul's life was visible to Timothy. And remember, Paul said, I want you to imitate me. And that is not an arrogant statement. That's a humbling statement. Watch me, and if you see generosity in my life, copy that. Watch me, and if you see a thriving marriage, imitate that. Watch me, and if you see me making true friendship and brotherhood, copy what I do. And there's generous fruit in the life of a man whose roots go down, who lives like a tree, who never forgets, I've got to extract the nutrients and the moisture from the soil of God's love for me. I've got to extract that on a daily basis. And so Paul says in 1 Corinthians 11:1, be imitators of me as I am of Christ. It's not an arrogant thing on occasion to say, well, do what I do. And sometimes around the table, that happens without it saying that way. We just say, well, here's how it works for me. Here's something I've discovered that really works for me. And, I hear this all the time that, I learned from somebody in Ironworks, and I've been copying that kind of behavior. It bears fruit. And it gives nourishment to those who are around, and that's the way what we want to do as brothers. Well, that's the groundwork that this comes from. And now what I want to do is a little exercise and prompt you and get you to thinking of recognizing the brother I have and the brother I am. Either or. So look around. Do I have a brother like this? Look inside. Am I this kind of brother? And I stole this from one of those free books on the back table. I can't even remember the name of it, so I'm going to take credit for it myself. But I've got a list here of different kinds of brothers, and you might recognize that's why I want this guy in my life. Or maybe I think that's what I bring. Or I was talking to a young man the other day who, and I gave him this phrase, which I've given to you before, but I think we need this. This is why we need brothers, is because we don't know often what we bring to the game. We often don't see the strengths that we have because we live in them all the time, and it feels boring to us. But somebody else can share it with us. So I shared with this what I memorized as a young pastor. It says, when you search for yourself, you'll probably find nothing. Not because there's nothing to find, but because you don't know where to look. Your only hope is to give yourself away in love and let others tell you what you had to give. That last part of it is why we need brothers. Sometimes a brother can say, hey, this is what you bring into my life. And that's true transparency. That's not a compliment, that's an affirmation. So maybe you are this kind of brother. Maybe you don't know it. Maybe you do. But look for some of these things, because this may help you say, that's why I enjoy being with this guy, because that's what he brings. So here's 8 kinds of different men, friends, brothers in my life. Number 1 is the builder. He's the motivator, the pusher, the investor. He draws out your potential like your best coach. Maybe your dad or a trainer that you've had. And if you have this kind of person in your life, and some of us do, you may just say, you might want to reflect to him, thank you, I needed that push. If you are a builder, then study your friend and look for ways that you can really encourage him in his strengths. Instead of fixing his weaknesses, look at how you can build his strengths in his life. The second one is the champion. This is the one who stands up, who stands for you, who has your back. And if you have this kind of friend in your life, acknowledge what that's meant in your life. This is probably the gift of encouragement, the one who stands behind you. And if you're this kind of champion, just notice somebody around you who needs that kind of support and encouragement. Then there's the collaborator. This is the person who has similar interests and passions. He gets me. We just connect at certain levels. And here's my exhortation. If you have a collaborator in your life who likes the same hobby, the same interest, the same sport, and you just connect on that level, try to get beneath the kicking of tires and talking about hockey and talk about life. Maybe get away from your hobby a little bit, change venues, and go deeper. Go to the next layer beneath opinions and get to some of the ways that life is happening. And one of the best ways to do that is to say, you know what, let's take a break from whatever we're doing. Can we have coffee? And while we're doing that, just tell me your story. So many guys that I know, I've never heard their story. And you hear their story, and a whole new world opens up. So that's how to go deeper with a collaborator. There's a companion. This is just the person who's always there. It may be a lifelong friend. They're available. And if you have this person, you are very fortunate, especially if you've gone to the level where you understand each other. And make sure if you have this companion in your life that there's some reciprocity in this, that you're not just a taker, but you're also a giver, but you're also not keeping score. He did this for me, so I've got to do that for him. A true companion doesn't keep score. They just give to one another. Then there's the connector. This is the bridge builder, the introducer, the inviter, the pointer. I've got a guy, and I've got a couple of men like this in my life that they just know resources. The best way you can complement a connector is to use the resources that he's recommending, to take his recommendations, to go to the restaurant he knows about, to use the tool that he's recommended to you. There's nothing more complimentary to a connector than actually taking some things that he's recommended to you. Then there's the energizer, the fun person, the booster, the laugh person who helps you laugh and smile and relax. And just to appreciate this person, I knew a guy who was an energizer, and I caught him at a down moment. And he said, people just invite me to bring energy. And if you're an energizer, that's in some ways a compliment. But he said, every once in a while I just want to show up myself. So, an energizer is somebody who gets the pile moving, but don't expect that they're just self-generating. They need encouragement as well. Then there's the mind expander, who brings new ideas and challenges you and draws you out and helps you think more deeply. And if you're a mind expander kind of person, make sure you don't do a data dump every time you're asked a question. the latest book, and it's 10 minutes later before the other person gets to have a word in the conversation. Don't be a fire hydrant to them. But on the other hand, if you have a mind expander person who's reading, who's studying, who's kind of always breaking the paradigm, always providing new insight, what a valuable thing that is to help you think in new ways, to give you a different perspective, to have a valuable insight with a different perspective on things, and to ask questions of a mind expander, somebody who's growing in that way. And then finally, there's the navigator who meets you at the crossroads of life or in the storm of life and helps give you a new compass heading to help you navigate through the thicket that you're going through, that keeps you grounded with wisdom and helps you reach your destination, not his destination. And the universal counsel of a navigator is to do the next right thing. Actually, I heard Glenn Beck say that the other day on the radio. He said, don't think about the future. We don't know about the future. We just need to do the next right thing. I thought, I need to send him my book, but he probably won't read it. Well, I think these are helpful to break down some of the categories. Maybe you recognize, that's what this person brings to me. And that's why I like to be around them. Or I think this is what I tend to bring. And I want to maximize that in my friendships, in my brotherhood with other people. Well, we're going to talk around the table here, but let's just talk about a little bro behavior here. First of all, these action steps. Maybe a brotherhood can be deepened by simple action steps. Phone a bro. Just call somebody about, hey, just want to say hi. Or ask a question. Or maybe it's invite a bro. Would you come with me to something that we're doing? Just anything, because something that you're planning. Or a deliberate affirmation of a brother. Maybe it's an email or a text. Hey, thanks for what you said. Thanks for what you did. I saw this in your life. I recognized a strength in you. That just deepens the brotherhood. So I've got some questions here for you to talk about around the table, and I hope that you will go right up to that edge where it gets risky and then take one more half step into that. So let's share around our tables this morning.